Now, we were going to have a nice, gentle discussion about whether there should be a third runway at Heathrow. And then President Trump intervened and sent out this tweet. And I'm going to read you the whole thing because I think you need to hear the whole thing. He says, "I'm not looking to hurt Russia. I love the Russian people and always had a very good relationship with President Putin. And this despite the radical left's Russia, Russia, Russia hoax in capital letters. We must never forget that Russia helped us win the Second World War, losing almost 60 million lives in the process. All of that being said, I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is failing, and President Putin a very big favour. Settle now and stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse. If we don't make a deal, and soon, I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries. Let's get this war, which would never have started if I were president, over with. We can do it the easy way or the hard way, and the easy way is always better. It's time to make a deal. No more lives should be lost," in capital letters. Well, that is a very interesting intervention because if you remember, he said many months ago that he would solve the Ukraine war in his first 24 hours. Well, clearly that was hyperbole. That was never going to happen. But this intervention, I think, is very significant. But what does it mean? Because I think some people say, well, this is a sign that Donald Trump believes in peace. Others will say, does it feel more like a betrayal of Ukraine, given it would lose territory to Russia as part of any ceasefire deal? Because I don't think it's possible that Crimea or the Donbass are going to be handed back to Ukraine under any ceasefire deal. So I want to get your views on that question. Would this be a betrayal of Ukraine? 0345 6060 973. Simon Marks joins us, LBC's US correspondent, live from Washington. Simon, pleasure to talk to you. Wasn't expecting to talk to you tonight, but when the president says something like this, I think it's pretty noteworthy, isn't it?
We're going to be seeing a lot of each other, Ian. He is like an Energizer bunny here. And on this issue, that statement that you read out regarding the message that he's sending to Vladimir Putin, I think it is not coincidental that that message was released after the White House learnt that President Putin and President Xi had spoken to one another shortly after the inauguration of Donald Trump on Monday. This is an American president who came into office absolutely determined that he is going to end the war in Ukraine. As you said, he promised to do it on day one of his presidency. That was never, ever going to happen. But it's now the second full day of his presidency. And he's sending a message to Vladimir Putin. And that message is, don't even think about messing around here. We are going to get everybody sitting around a negotiating table, and we're going to do it quickly. And the reason why Donald Trump wants to send that message is, first of all, I think he wants to pre-game the conversation or meeting that is apparently being set up between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. He keeps talking about the possibility of a meeting with the Russian leader soon. And he's also trying to head off efforts by Moscow to obfuscate and delay and set terms for peace negotiations that themselves would be favourable to Russia. And we've now had Moscow's reaction to that statement by Donald Trump. And it has come from Russia's deputy ambassador at the United Nations, Dmitry Polyansky. He described America's policy towards Ukraine, its military and political support of Kyiv, as malicious. He's called on Donald Trump to stop this malicious policy. Donald Trump talks of a ridiculous war by Russia against Ukraine. The Russians are saying the United States is engaged in a malicious policy towards the region. And he says we have to see what this deal means in President Trump's understanding. It is first and foremost a question of addressing the root causes of the Ukrainian crisis. It's not merely the question of ending the war. So that is a fresh indication from the Russians that they see this as not something that, you're going to resolve after one round of talks between Moscow and Kyiv. This is going to be protracted. This is going to last for a while. And Donald Trump is desperate to get this war over and done with. Because remember that the touchstone of his administration's foreign policy is largely to disengage from Europe. He doesn't want to get caught up in having to navigate Ukraine any longer. He wants to switch America's foreign policy focus to the Indo-Pacific and to containing China's aspirations there. So I think this message today is a message aimed at Vladimir Putin, copied to President Xi Jinping of China, saying, I think I know what you guys are doing and I'm not going to allow you to do it.
OK, Simon, thank you very much indeed. Jeffrey Pryce is Senior Fellow of the Foreign Policy Institute at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland, also former Special Counsel for International Affairs at the US Department of Defense, who was regularly involved in negotiations with both Russia and Ukraine. Jeffrey Pryce, thank you very much for joining us on LBC. What do you make of this intervention from the president? Do you think it will bear fruit?
Well, this is classic Trump. I mean, I think the good news is that Trump's post seems to be based on the understanding that Russia is the problem. And he's opening the door to a strategy of putting maximum pressure on Russia. It's interesting. This is consistent with a lot of Trump's approach, which is to focus on trade and economic sanctions. And there's a lot of pressure to be put. Maximum pressure on Russia. As well
We've lost you. Oh, no, you're back. Sorry, we lost the line there for a moment. What do you think the Russian response to this is going to be?
They're going to have a hard time coming around to anything that's acceptable either to the United States or to Russia. I think that's going to be a question of just the facts on the ground. But again, their economy is in a very weak position. And frankly, strategically, they're not doing as well as they might think. They are inching forward on the ground at a huge cost to their own men. But also bear in mind, part of that is because we, the United States, took a long time to get military assistance to Ukraine this spring, and some of that was attributed to influence of President Trump. So President Trump is in a position to drive a very hard bargain with Putin, because Putin understands, I think, there's an assumption in Russia that they're not going to get any more sympathetic voice from the United States or the West than they currently have. So this would be a time to put more pressure on the Russians.
And what form of pressure could there be?
Well, first, he might be thinking about secondary sanctions. He might be thinking about greater targeting of the Russian energy sector, indirectly as well as directly. And what I'm hoping is there's also continued pressure on the military side. I mean, Russia, you remember their primary strategic reason 10 years ago for going into Ukraine, seizing Crimea, was the Black Sea Fleet being able to be based in Sevastopol and Crimea. They have already lost that. The Ukrainians have already defeated the Russian ability to base the Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol, and the Ukrainians are now occupying part of Russia. So it is going into its fourth year now. It is not going well for Russia. I am not optimistic that Putin will find it easy to declare victory and go home, to find some sort of resolution. But hopefully we're in a position now where the levers of influence, the levers of pressure are going to be applied on Russia.